I'll start talking while we do this. So I'm a Python and C programmer from New York. I work for MongoDB there. And in New York, so I want to talk today about generosity and why generosity so often sort of goes wrong. Like, why is it that we are trying to help newcomers and we start off with this intention to be generous to them and to help them out, and then we lose our temper and we get mad at them and we lash out and we become cruel. I think I understand why this happens, and I think that I also have a method for how to prevent this from happening to us. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And I'll show you slides if I can. So one more go. Well, yeah, if you want to take a look at this, that would be great. Yeah, go for it. So in the United States, kind of the symbol of generosity for us is this character named Santa Claus. And Santa Claus, you might know him as Saint Nicholas or Father Christmas. He goes around giving presents to children on the night before Christmas, just distributing out gifts for free. And in recent years in New York City, we have a new tradition which is called SantaCon. And SantaCon is when a bunch of young men mostly come to New York City and they dress up like Santa Claus and they go around the city having this like big party. And they go from bar to bar getting drunk. It's this really fun time. A few years ago, I was walking around New York City, and I saw the most amazing thing. I saw a young man who was dressed like Santa Claus with, the white hat and a fake beard and a red jacket. He was talking to a homeless man who was sitting in a wheelchair on the sidewalk. The homeless man asked Santa Claus, "Can you spare some money?" And Santa Claus digs into his pocket, and he comes out with a $5 bill. It's, a substantial amount of money. And he thinks for a second that he gives the $5 bill to the homeless man in the wheelchair. And the man in the wheelchair, he just kind of takes the money and sticks it in his pocket. He doesn't, say thank you. I don't know why. He's tired or something. And all of a sudden, something goes wrong. Santa Claus becomes enraged at the homeless person. He says, "Damn it, I gave you $5. I meant to give you $1, and I would have given you $1, but 5 is the smallest I had, so you ought to be lucky, man. This is your lucky day. You should at least say thank you." And this is terrible, right? It's terrible for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's terrible because of power. I thought I saw something. Maybe not. Santa Claus is a privileged young white man with money and a home. The homeless man is a middle-aged, black, disabled person without a home. And Santa Claus is just yelling at him. It's terrible. The other terrible thing is that Santa Claus is actually dressed like the symbol of generosity. And he had intended to be generous, and then in a moment, something went wrong and he became cruel and angry. So why does this happen? And this isn't just a story about Santa Claus. This is a story about technology communities. This happens in technology communities every day. It happened to me a little while ago. I was hanging out on Slack, where new MongoDB employees hang out and ask each other questions. And this new colleague of mine got on Slack and he said, hey, how do I do such and such with MongoDB? Does anybody know the answer? And I thought I knew the answer. I said, oh, yes. Ooh, haha.
You have it.
Thank you so much.
You want a mirror? No.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah, but I paid $200 for clip art. Yeah, thank you. All right. So here's SantaCon. Here's Mad Santa. I'm sorry that we couldn't use him. Right, so I was on Slack, and somebody asked, how do I do such and such with MongoDB? And I said, that's going to be implemented in the next release. And then this person asks a follow-up question. What's the ticket number for that feature? And I don't know why, but suddenly I got furious. I got really sarcastic. I said, I memorize all ticket numbers. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he asks, are you sure? I can't find ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yeah, I laughed too, right? We all laugh at this. I played a trick on him. But then I immediately felt terrible. This is not the way. I'm one of the most senior programmers at MongoDB. This is not the kind of behavior that I want to demonstrate to new employees, that we humiliate people in public because they make us angry. Now, you might ask, why does this matter at all? We're here to write code. If the code works, if it's fast, does it matter if we're nice to each other or not? And I think it does. Last month on the Stack Overflow blog, David Robinson wrote this article that showed that Python has been growing incredibly fast for the last 6 years. It's now the most popular of the major languages that people ask questions about on Stack Overflow. If you'd asked me a few years ago whether Python was going to be winning over JavaScript or Objective-C or Swift or Go, I would not have predicted this. And the author made a very simple projection that showed over the next 2 years, even in the most pessimistic forecast, we are going to far outgrow all the other languages in Stack Overflow. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Python has a great syntax. It's versatile. We are good at scripting and web application development. You can write a database in Python, and I think that we're good at data science, which is driving a lot of this recent acceleration. I also think that we've got a really strong community, and we welcome newcomers. We're a nice community of programmers, and in particular, I think that we started to understand that developing a community that is inclusive and diverse is important. We understood that before most other language communities did. And I think that that also contributes to this growth. And this is good news for everybody in this room, because we are all Python experts, or we are becoming Python experts. If you've come to this conference, you've invested in your skills, and you're spending time with this community. So the fact that Python is becoming more and more popular, it's good for us. It makes our skills more valuable. And you're going to see that reflected in your salary, in your job opportunities, in your job security. This chart means that our skills are becoming more valuable every year. But we still have work to do. Our community is not as welcoming as it could be. I searched Stack Overflow for rude answers to beginners' questions, and it was not hard to find examples. So here's somebody asking about image processing in Python. It's a perfectly reasonable question. And the very first answer is, let me see if I can get my clicker working. That would be nice. Nope. All right. Very first answer to this is you're fucked for your intro to programming final. What's the message here? The message is if you're asking this question, you must be a student, and you are doomed. You are not going to pass. You are not smart enough. Get out. I immediately found another example of this kind of bad behavior. Somebody's asking about Unicode in Python. Who here has never been confused by Unicode in Python, right? And yet, somebody answers this with, this is only for people who can code, go back to school. Again, the message is, you are lazy and stupid, you don't belong here, get out. And part of the problem here is Stack Overflow. I think that Stack Overflow really, it's a nice place to visit if you're not asking a question. You can read other people's questions and answers, and it's great for that. It's sort of like Hunger Games. Hunger Games is a sci-fi movie. It's in English, maybe you've seen it. It's about children who kill each other. And Stack Overflow is kind of like that, because if you ask a question, all of these strangers start fighting each other to get those 15 points, to be the one whose answer is marked correct. The outcome is very pretty, right? You know, the winner of the contest has this lovely dress. It's great to watch. It's lovely to be in the audience. But if you're asking a question on Stack Overflow, I think it's a little bit more like this. You're covered in blood. There's bodies in the surf behind you. And I'm not here to describe what should change about Stack Overflow to make it a community worth joining, but I do know that you and I can be better participants in Stack Overflow. We can control our own behavior. So, I'd like to do a little interactive exercise. I promise it will be short, although I won't promise that it isn't painful. So, I'd like you, first of all, to pair up. I know that these rows aren't necessarily even, but turn to your left or right and introduce yourself. You're going to get a partner, okay? So please do that now. Nice. Okay. So you've found your partner. Good. And now you're going to do the exercise. Are you ready? Okay. So the person on the left, please repeat after me. All right, 1, 2, 3. How do I convert from PNG to GIF in Python? Okay. Have you asked the question? Okay. Now we're going to do, settle down. Shh. All right, now we're going to do the second half of the exercise. Person on the right, you say. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Just Google it. You're lazy and stupid. Okay. How does this feel? And what does this do to our community when we treat each other this way, right? It decimates the community. We drive people away when we treat each other this way. Some of our best experts leave every day because they see us treating each other this way. Maybe they're still programming Python, but they're not participating in conversations anymore online. The other thing this does is that it drives away newcomers. I think that particularly if you're not confident that you belong with us, when somebody treats you this way, it can drive you away. And so we're losing out on some of the best minds of the next generation, people who could be the great Python programmers 5 or 10 years from now. They ask a beginner question, somebody's mean to them, and they're gone. And then finally, it feels bad, right? Like, what did it feel like to say, you're lazy and stupid? Or, right? What did it feel like to be told you're lazy and stupid? That's not the kind of community I want to be a member of. So, given that this is It's not in our interests. It hurts our community. It makes our skills less valuable because we drive people out. Why do we do this? Why do we act against our own self-interests? I think that there's like 3 scenarios that I find really make me angry and make me treat people badly. And then one of them is when I act generously and I don't get the reward that I was expecting. This happened to Bad Santa, right? He gave a $5 bill to a homeless man, and then he didn't get the thank you and the good feeling that he was expecting, and so he got angry. The other thing that can happen is when you encounter an unexpected difficulty. So this can happen on IRC, mailing lists, Stack Overflow, even face-to-face. Somebody asks me a question, I make an effort to answer it, and then the person doesn't understand my answer, or I need to explain it more clearly. All of a sudden, it's harder than I thought it was going to be, and I lose my temper. And then the final thing that can really make me angry is when I feel like I'm trapped, like I must answer this question even though I don't want to. I heard a story about an example like this. So there's a man named Sawyer X, who's a prominent Perl programmer. And Sawyer was giving a talk at a conference. It was a Perl conference. He's a Perl programmer. He gave a talk about Perl web frameworks. It was very well thought out and sophisticated. Sawyer gave the clearest explanation he could, and then it was time for question and answer. Somebody gets up from the audience and asks, "Hey, I use PHP. Is there any need for a web framework or not?" And it's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with Sawyer's carefully prepared talk. But he can't just say, "I'm not going to answer that question," because he feels like he's in the arena, right? You can't just say, "I'm not going to answer that," when you're in a room with lots of people. So he made fun of the guy. He said, "If you use PHP, I can't help you." And the audience laughed, and Sawyer felt clever. But he told me that he immediately regretted that he had done this. And he vowed never to lash out at somebody like this again. So these are like 3 scenarios, unexpected difficulty, a sense of obligation. They all kind of boil down to one thing, which is we have expectations for how things are going to go, that we're going to make a certain amount of effort and get a certain reward. And when those expectations are violated, we get angry. I've been practicing Buddhism for many years, and my thinking about this is influenced by Buddhism. And Buddha talked about this in his very first tech talk. Buddha was at a small conference. They didn't even have a venue. They were just sitting under a tree. And Buddha had just had his great insight after many years of meditation, and he explained what he had learned in terms of like 4 truths. And the first truth is that to be alive is to be dissatisfied, to want things to be better than they are now. We don't accept the way things are. This dissatisfaction is caused by wanting more of what we want and less of what we don't want, and expecting that if we get more, or if we get rid of more, that it will make us happy for a long time, right? This is the unrealistic expectation. If I get a promotion, or if I delete 10 emails, that's temporarily satisfying, but it doesn't make me happy for the long term. We suffer because we expect that it will make us happy, and that's not realistic. Now, the third truth is that we can stop being dissatisfied. We can liberate ourselves from this feeling by understanding our own minds, by understanding that our expectations are not realistic. And then the fourth truth is that the way to transform ourselves this way is to live a generous and ethical life and to understand how our minds work. And I've been studying this stuff for many years. I've been meditating for many years. It doesn't mean that I don't get angry all the time. Just a week ago, somebody commented on my video on YouTube. I uploaded this video called How Do Python Coroutines Work? And this took me months of research and preparation and rehearsal to create this video. And then somebody posts a comment, I want to master Python, what should I do? And this just really pissed me off. I wanted to say something sarcastic like, well, for starters, maybe you could spell Python with a capital P and end a question with a question mark. And then, just Google it. You're lazy and stupid. I don't have time for this. But I didn't. It's easy enough to close a tab. It's just Command W on a Mac, and it goes away. And I was just too angry to answer this person, so I just didn't answer at all. And that works fine. So this is the beginning of my method for how not to be angry at people and how not to treat them badly. This is the second half of this talk. This is what to do about this rage that we sometimes feel. And I want to start with a little aside that this talk is not for trolls. I know that people join communities with bad intentions. But this talk is not for them. The only thing that I know how to do with trolls is ban them. But this talk is for you and me. We join communities with the intent to be generous to newcomers, and then something goes wrong. And so we are here today to figure out how to prevent that from happening. And because I'm a nerd, I made a flowchart with GraphViz. So it starts at the top, you read a question, and then maybe it makes you angry. And then you've got some options. You can walk away, or you can recall your intention. You can remember what you're doing here, and then check again, am I angry still or not? If you're not, then you can complete answering the question, and then you get your reward, whatever it is. For me, it's a glass of whiskey. Now, what is the most important box in this flowchart, do you think? I think it's this one. You have to ask yourself, am I angry or not? And in person, it's easy. If I'm face-to-face with you and you ask me a question and I get angry, I feel myself breathing, my neck gets tense. But when you're online, you're just typing, and you're not aware of your body at all. I think that this is part of the reason why we behave so much worse online than we do face-to-face, is that we're not feeling our bodies while we are communicating. So ask yourself, right, how do I feel? Am I angry or not? And then, if you are, remember, you can just walk away. There's no reason that just because you started answering a question that you have to finish it. Just because you read something in Stack Overflow, it doesn't oblige you to stay there. In the United States, we have this saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I think that that is a perfect principle to apply online. Somebody else will answer it, somebody who's not angry. But maybe, you're angry, but you want to get over it. You still want to answer this question because it's your job, or you have an intention of nurturing new programmers. How do you stop being angry? The thing that works for me is just to remember my intention. What was I doing here in the first place? And I think that there's about 3 intentions for me that bring me to Stack Overflow or mailing lists to answer beginners' questions. And the first of these intentions might simply be that it's my job to answer questions. It's my job to answer questions about MongoDB and Stack Overflow, for example. Or it's my job to answer questions about using Python and MongoDB on the mailing list. And I want to do my job well. Another thing is, you might not be paid to answer questions about an open source project, but you care about that project and you want people to use it correctly. So you care about your code, you want to take good care of it. Maybe that's your intention. Or you just want to nurture new programmers in general. Maybe you're answering questions about basic Python usage on Stack Overflow. Why are you doing that? I do that because I want to nurture the next generation of programmers and also to use Python as a way of increasing access to computer science for everybody who wants to learn how to code. So once you've kind of remembered what you were doing here, check in again. Am I still angry or not? And if you've stopped being angry because you remembered why you were trying to answer this question in the first place, then you're ready to go ahead and answer it. And I have a basic technique that will get you off to the right start. So let's say you're reading this Unicode question. So you're going to answer it, and it doesn't matter whether this is a good question or a bad question, or a basic question or an advanced question. Just open that text box and type, good question. All right? Makes you feel good, makes the other person feel good. It gets everything off to the right start. So we're going to do another interactive exercise. And I would like you all to behave, please, okay? So you're going to have the same partners as you did before, but we're going to switch roles. So now it's the person on the right. You're going to say, once again, okay, 1, 2, 3, how do I convert from PNG to GIF in Python? Okay? And now, the person on the left, you're just going to say, good question. Okay? All right. So how did that feel? How does it feel to just say, good question? And how does it feel to hear, good question? Right? It gets things off to a right start. It doesn't matter whether it was actually a good question or not. Now, here comes another dangerous spot. What if you have answered the question, but the person who asked it doesn't understand, or asks a follow-up question, or needs you to explain it more clearly? You've invested a certain amount of effort, and you expected the reward. You thought you were going to be done, but you aren't. I find this infuriating. Right? This is what happened to me a couple of years ago on Slack. This is why I lost my temper with that new colleague of mine. I thought I had answered his question, but then he answered a follow-up question. He wanted me to make more effort. I encountered an unexpected difficulty, and I responded with sarcasm and cruelty. So if you're not complete again, you got to go back up to the top and take 3 more breaths. Ask yourself, am I angry or no? And here I think it's helpful to just, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Remember what it felt like today when somebody called you lazy and stupid. You don't want to put somebody else in that position. Or just remember when you were first learning something, anything. You were first learning a language, or you were first learning how to program computers at all. Just remember that everybody starts somewhere. And treat everybody with the respect that they deserve. And now, if you manage to drive the conversation to completion, it's time for your reward. And for me, the reward is a glass of whiskey, or whatever you want, glass of wine, tapas. It's up to you. But seriously, the outcome of treating newcomers well is, it's what we're here for. It's the best. So I think about my colleague at MongoDB, a woman who I trained when she first joined MongoDB named Azia Kamsky. And she joined MongoDB when we only had 30 or 40 employees, and so we were all doing everything, and I was doing the initial technical training for new hires. I was teaching them how MongoDB works internally. And Azia took this class from me, and I couldn't sort of figure out, what was her deal. She was this funny Russian lady. She wasn't like anybody else in that class. And she kept interrupting me to ask these basic questions. I would be explaining something about MongoDB, and she would say, hold on, wait. Start over again, break it down for me. What are you really saying? But I never lost my temper with her. I was respectful, and I had some advantages. First of all, we were face-to-face. We were in a room, and that makes it easy to treat people respectfully. And also, I was doing my job that day. It was my job to teach this class, and so I knew that I was going to be there all day, no matter what. So it was easy to be patient with her. And I'm so glad I was, because it turns out Asia was already an extremely experienced engineer, far more experienced than me. When she was taking my class, she just didn't know how MongoDB works. And she's one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, and she's now one of the most valuable colleagues that I have. She's the lead product manager. She's given talks about MongoDB that have been the most popular and highest rated of any MongoDB talks. But imagine if I had treated her disrespectfully when she was asking those basic questions at first. Like, Asia could work anywhere, and she might have just quit. I would have if I were her and somebody disrespected me. I don't want to work for a company where people are mean to each other. But because I treated her well when she was first starting out, she has proven to be one of the most valuable people at MongoDB. So this is what we get from treating people well. This is the ultimate reward. First of all, that we cultivate our community. We keep that line moving up and to the right. We keep Python growing, and that makes our own skills more valuable. We also welcome new members, so people who may not be sure that they belong with us. We reassure them that there's no such thing as a stupid question. We will treat the most basic questions from the newest programmers respectfully and well, and that helps us use Python to create an inclusive and diverse community around writing code. And finally, it feels good. It feels good to be part of a community where people treat each other with respect. It's the kind of community that I want to be a member of. So I've got one takeaway for you from this talk. You don't have to memorize the whole flowchart. You just have to remember this. Okay? So I've got another interaction for you. So consider this vow. This is optional. You don't have to do this, but I invite you, if you want, to vow to take 3 breaths before you answer questions online. Okay? So, if you're ready, then please repeat after me. I vow to take 3 breaths before I answer a question online. Great. Thank you very much. I'm not going to take any questions, but I would love to talk with you about this afterwards and hear your ideas about how to avoid getting angry online. Thanks a lot.